Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Strong Conversations. I appreciate you spending this time with me, technical difficulties and all, but as usual, we work through it. Stuff happens. We live to video cast another day. We'll talk about my technical difficulties later. So, with that being said, thank you for joining me and my awesome guest, Dr. Kristopher Childs. Per the way Strong Conversations works, I will allow him to introduce himself because no one knows you better than you. So welcome and thank you again for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. How are you doing today?
It's been one. Me and this computer are gonna fight, but it's okay.
Sometimes you have to fight the computer.
You do. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Real quick, I am Dr. Kristopher James Childs. I'm what I call your favorite educator. I do a lot of things in the education space. I've had the opportunity to serve currently as an educator, a consultant, and also a member of leadership teams throughout the country in some different capacities. A lot of my focus is on teacher content and pedagogical knowledge, equity, leadership development, and the organizational change. But the core, what a lot of people know me for, I go unapologetically hard for mathematics education.
And that's why you're here today. You are kicking off my What Will It Look Like When Black Lives Matter in School series. So I do want to give a little bit of background. A couple of weeks ago, I did a panel that was called Do Black Lives Matter in School? And the panel surrounded a 2018 report or surrounded some statistics from 2018, which basically said that according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, Black youth make up 15.5% of public school enrollment, but they're represented in 39% of students suspended from school, and that the disparity is not based solely on differences in behavior. And as a disciplinarian, by trade, I'm here to tell you that discipline can be arbitrary, and it's being greatly seen in these numbers. They also talk about the fact that Black girls are suspended at 5 times the rate of their white female counterparts, and that Black disabled youth are more likely to be educated in segregated classrooms and less likely to graduate than their white counterparts with the same diagnosed disabilities. They also found that queer and gender non-conforming Black youth were also disciplined at a higher rate and not protected by safe spaces, the same safe spaces that are afforded to white LGBTQ youth. And lastly, that advanced placement and gifted classes largely exclude Black youth. So, given that, what we did is we came to the conclusion when we got asked the question, do Black Lives Matter in school? The answer was no. So now what I am trying to do is to create a space where minds that are equitable education minds can come together and build, I won't even say our dream space, because this is an equity space. This should be what's happening. So my question to you as a mathematics educator, a pedagogical educator, is what will it look like when Black Lives Matter in school for what you do? So we're starting with math. What will it look like?
So what we have to first understand is we talk a lot about schools, but schools are doing what they were designed to do. Especially after we look at Brown versus Board of Education, they're doing exactly what they're designed to do, especially as it relates to students who identify as Black. So first, let's understand that piece of information. But for them to matter for our students, we first have to think about what does it mean to have a Black-centered education? What does that mean? What does that look like? But then we have to also ask ourselves, yeah, it's great that we posit a Black student education. It can be unapologetically Black. We can talk about current Black heroes. We can talk about past Black heroes. But we really think that's going to work in a predominantly white ran educational system?
And that's where I was going to go and ask you too. Why I need to interject for 1 second and just say that I've had an epiphany over the last couple weeks as I was preparing for that first panel, and it made me sad and disheartened, and then it made me mad. Most of us, and by us I mean black people that have come through a traditional public education system, have done so, that have done well, I should say, have done so because on some level we have succumbed to the white supremacist system, and that's why we were able to be okay, because we have to be honest in the fact that we are in a system that was built in and upon white supremacy. And I've said this time and time again, that we're also dealing with a system that was put in place before we were even counted as fully actualized real human beings. So I totally get what you're saying, and the fact that we have to look at the systems. So sorry, just had to interject that there.
No, you're fine. So as we look at the system, we have to ask ourselves one or two things. If you, depending upon your community, you have an opportunity to engage with your school, engage with your school district to create this experience. Are we taking advantage of that environment? Environments that are predominantly black, with predominantly black teachers, predominantly black district. Are we using a community-based approach to impact the schools we can control? Or are we so focused on schools that we know we have no say in, unfortunately, or this, it is what it is? Are we so focused on those? So that's the first thing. Are we impacting the schools we can impact? The second piece is, are we rethinking of this whole concept and notion of school? If we really think about successful environments, yes, you have your quote unquote regular school day, but are we harnessing the community? Are we harnessing churches? Are we harnessing just all the things around us to create a high quality educational experience for black kids? Are we so focused and believing in the K-12 system is going to give them everything that they need to know? So part of the onus is on ourselves. And though we're not pushing the levers that we need to push in the environments we can control, and thinking about the environments we can't control, you may not be able to control what they teach in that setting at the school day. But guess what? When they come home, this is the evening time. Can you control that? Can a group of families come together and say, hey, I know what you learned in school, I'm gonna give you a little bit more? Can the church come together one day? I know, black folks, we love some Jesus. Can we come together and say, I'm gonna teach you Jesus, and then I'm gonna teach you a little bit of financial literacy also. I'm gonna teach you Jesus and how to get a job. Those are the things we have to start doing, because the pandemic should have shown us how we can jailbreak education and make it 10 times better. Or are we going to continually put our students in these environments, not push for better, and just say, I'm going to see what happens?
But pushing for better, I want to touch on that. When you don't feel like you have control of the system, what does pushing for better look like?
It's a collective piece, because what we have to understand, a lot of times, most of us don't understand the K-12 system. We've gone and matriculated through one, but a lot of us do not understand the ins and outs. So we need to collectively, as it relates to pushing for better, work together and have conversations. What do we actually want for our school to be? And using a community-based approach. Are you involved in the PTA at your school? Are you involved in the school advisory council at your school? These are things 99% of schools have. Are we involved? Are you taking time out of your day to go literally volunteer at the school? Those are avenues that we can be involved in that are what I call low-hanging fruit. And you really don't even have to understand the system just to do those pieces. Now, do we need to start running for school boards and getting grassroots organizations together to push for certain curriculums? Yeah. But at the very least, are we getting up to engage in the environments that we're in? Are we going down there? I'm going to challenge all of us. Once every other month, spend an hour at your local school. That's getting involved.
See, now you're doing too much. Now you're doing too much. I send my child to school to be educated by the professionals. I've already done your job for a year and a half while you got free money and didn't do anything. And now you want me to come up to the school too? Why?
Good question. So number one, everybody's saying, they got free money. Every environment is different. I've seen some amazing things happen during the pandemic with teachers and schools. I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
in the ones that were face to face and the ones that were virtual. I know, the news is going to let us believe it was the worst thing ever. It fell apart. In a lot of places, it was actually a better experience because guess what? Kids weren't getting bullied as much. Kids were getting meals at home. They were getting loved by their families. And then
Microaggressions were at a minimum.
right. And then also as educators, you didn't have to deal with a lot of foolishness you deal with your colleagues, just being honest, especially as a Black identified educator. But going to your point, yeah, Chris, that sounds good, but guess what? I pay my taxes. That school should do their job, and I should be able to go home. But I'm talking to Black folks right now. That's not who we are. We in our blood and in our veins is a collectivist mentality, meaning we work together to build our community, and a part of that is our schools, and a part of that is the kids that are walking in our neighborhood. We used to say a lot of times growing up, we don't hear as much. It takes a village. So I get, yes, the past year was rough for everybody. I get you want the school to do better, but guess what? That school needs you just as much as you need them to do their part. And 60 minutes, literally turning off our favorite show, 60 minutes every other month, going out to school. And if all of us did it in the community, it can change our community. And we have to ask ourselves, is it about you sacrificing the 60, or is it about all of these kids possibly seeing you and you opening up a whole nother pathway of life for them because you took 60 minutes out of your day?
It also raises a level of accountability. Let's just be honest. People move differently when they know someone is watching. Just an example, I remember when we had to put my mom in a nursing home, and you could walk through the nursing home and you shouldn't be able to, but you could kind of look at the residents and you could see whose family visited and whose family popped up and whose didn't. Because when you don't know if somebody's gonna show up, oh, Miss Johnson, are you okay? Do you need more juice? Because somebody's grandchild might be standing right behind you, and you never know. And it's the same thing. Sometimes it shouldn't be this way, but people give the most attention to the spaces where they know that they may be held accountable. And I think honestly, that's why some people didn't like virtual. Some educators didn't like it, because now mom and dad have a bird's eye view into what's going on in this classroom. And now they're seeing that when little Johnny is coming home and telling you that the teacher's mouth is reckless, that teacher's mouth is actually a little bit reckless. So it held people accountable on both sides. And again, that hour a week, knowing that somebody from the community is showing up on these kids' behalf. I'm not being paid to be here. I'm here because these children are my investment in the future. Whatever that looks like, holds people accountable. And when people are held accountable, they move different.
But let's be honest. If on most people, on the average worker every day, if they didn't have someone holding them accountable, a supervisor, or getting the check, would they do what they're supposed to do?
Exactly.
So what we have to do is understand education has more eyes on it just because of the impacts that it can and cannot have on a child. But through that accountability piece, again, are we having a conversation with our schools of what do we collectively want this to be? Because again, as I'm one of the few people in the country that literally gets to travel the country and see schools around the country. I see some amazing schools that I'm like, I love this place. It's like the most amazing place ever. And I also see some schools that I wouldn't send my dog to if I had one to get potty trained. So it's a mix of, are we supporting the schools that are doing the right thing? So if you're in the community and the school is rocking and rolling, are you still supporting them?
And the crazy part, some of those schools are in the same school district.
Oh yeah. All of
that school that's doing amazing, and that school that sometimes they are in the same district.
And so I want to go back to your earlier piece, though, if it's okay with you, about the
of course
Black students mattering in schools and what does it take? We have to ask ourselves, do our Black kids see themselves in the school experience? What I do with my child every single day, they bring home different worksheets or bring home different assignments. And I call this the bare minimum. I look through and see, I have two daughters. Has she seen herself in these assignments? Has she seen herself through an image or through a story? That's bare minimum. So before we even get to like an unapologetically Black education experience, are we pushing for representation at our local schools? Are you asking the critical questions when you're walking down the hallways and doing a school visit? Hey, why don't I see this, or why do I see this overly represented in our school? Those are immediate changes that can be made so students can see, all right, I kind of belong here because I see myself in these activities.
Now, can I ask you a question about that
Go,
piece?
go.
Because one of the things, maybe, and I'm going to age myself here, maybe 10, 15-ish years ago, one of the issues that we had with pushback, well, not pushback, with representation, is that people got in their head, I just need to make it Black. And so you had these things of where, well, we're just gonna change the names and the word problems. And instead of Johnny having 5 apples, I don't know if you remember this, but this made the news where so and so had 5 bags, a type of situation where we're trying to make the math culturally relevant. So I think that sometimes when we're saying representation, because some people go off the deep end with things, we need to be specific about what that looks like.
But I think we gotta look at it multifaceted. One, do kids literally see themselves? Most time they don't. When they open up their curriculum materials, do they see themselves on the authorship pages, on the pages within it? Just literally a picture, not even a. You got to the word problem. I'm not even there. Literally just a picture. I just want my child to be sitting in class, looking around the room, and see someone who identifies as Black female. Perfect. Someone who identifies as Hispanic female. Perfect. Some multilingual words. Okay, perfect. I just want them to see multiple representation at its basic level. Then I get to the curriculum experience, not just a stereotypical curriculum experience where, hey, Chris, I'm in the Hispanic community. Guess what? I'm going to talk about Juan eating tacos. How about this? Can Juan just be riding a bicycle? Or can a Black kid just experience joy being Black and not the typical, oh my gosh, we're talking about Caroline today. You know, Caroline is descendant of slaves. Let's talk about the slave narrative. How about Caroline can just be a person deserving of space and opportunity to see themselves within the curriculum experience? And you mentioned this whole piece of culturally relevant pedagogy. I think that's something we have to look even deeper into, culturally responsive teaching, the work of Dr. Geneva Gay, where it's really understanding what is culture. What does it look like in a curriculum experience? And understanding every child needs to see themselves represented. So when you say a Black, unapologetically Black education, they can still be exposed to other race and ethnicities. And then when we look at through the lens of mathematics, first, I made a post on Twitter today, and it's talking about the origins of mathematics. How often do we talk about the African origins of mathematics, where civilization started, where mathematics started? As we talk about this unapologetically Black education, we talk about Black Lives Matter, we first have to make sure they're integrated naturally into a curriculum experience and not in a stereotypical manner. When we start to push for those things as a community, if I'm gonna put it right out there in the space, if I go to a Black community and I go into that school building and they talking all about these Greeks and this European centric view, and it's a Black community, I'm putting the onus on the school and the community. Just as when I go to Black churches and I see the white Jesus, that's something we gotta handle. And we need to push for those things to get it better. Because when you, perfect example, I challenge the audience right now. Think about something you love doing. Just think about something you like, you're the best at, or you just love doing. When you experience that, you light up. You change how you're engaging. You may read books on it, watch TV shows, because that's your thing. You love to do it. The same thing with our kids, our Black kids. When they see themselves in it, they get an opportunity to showcase their knowledge. They light up. That's what school has to be for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we as a community, because we've talked about the community a lot. So I want to go back to your point about having these extra sessions within the community. What does that look like? Is that a cohort? Is that hey, you Mr. Smith with the barbershop, can you come over here and teach these little boys about entrepreneurship? Or what does that look like?
It's all of it. If Mr. Smith has a barbershop, a couple guys, get a couple kids and say, hey, y'all go down to Mr. Smith's shop after school. He gonna teach you how about barbering and just give you some life lessons. Cost Mr. Smith nothing. If Mr. Smith has a lawn care service, hey, go hang out with Mr. Smith, Saturday for 2 hours and learn about cutting grass. It could be, hey, this person does accounting. Go hang out with them, learn about accounting. And then now what we're doing, look at what we're doing right now on YouTube. We can easily create, me and you just say, hey, let's say our jam is stocks. Create a couple little videos and just talking about stocks for our kids to go and watch. Now, we're going to say, well, Chris, the school should be doing all those things. Guess what? They should be doing a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I can keep blaming the system or I can correct it myself. As I stated earlier, they're community centers. I would put it on myself and I'm putting on my friends that out there are professionals that do very well. If they took 30 minutes and went and talked about them being an engineer, them being a pharmacist and recording it, you don't have to do it over and over again and showcase to these kids what is possible, it changes the game. The reason most of our Black identifying boys want to be athletes, that's who they see. Let's be honest. The reason some of them get into illegal activities, that is who is in the community, that's who they see. What do us professionals do? Move into the suburbs, get a nice car. We may visit the community, for something special every now and then. We need to get off of our butts and out of these suburban areas and go spend time and showing these kids what they can do. And I don't want to keep hearing this, Chris, these kids don't care about nothing. They just want to smoke and do it. These kids want everything that's possible. We just are not giving them what they need to experience it, to expose them to it, and to show them it can be cool to be an educator, it can be cool to be a professional, and you can make a whole lot more money doing it. Absolutely. So are we doing that part on us? And then after we've done all these things, if a kid still does not do well, guess what? At the very least, we say, guess what? We went all in. We did our part.
I did my part and I tried. I put it in front of you. And at some point it's up to you to take it, but you can't take what's not there. No, I totally agree. The other piece, go ahead.
No, I want to jump back because I'm talking about our Black families, what we need to do, not to these schools. No, I'm not going to let that off the hook.
That's where I was just about to steer you. We right here then.
To these schools and to these districts. I get it. Y'all scared now because you hear critical race here. Y'all get scared. Okay. Whoop-de-whoop. Every kid needs to be seen as human in the space. Every kid needs to see themselves in the educational experience. It is incumbent upon every educator, every school, every district to make sure students are seen throughout the curriculum experience. That is a non-negotiable. That has nothing to do with race. That has nothing to do with ethnicity. That has nothing to do with culture. That means it has everything to do with, do you see them as a human being deserving of space? Because in most of our curriculums, they're very white-centered. If they're deserving of seeing themselves throughout the curriculum experience, guess what? 53% of students identify as melanated in the school system. Guess what? Those students are the majority right now. Guess what? That majority needs to see themselves represented. And then earlier in the show, you mentioned students who identify as trans, students who identify as disabled. You mentioned students who identify as girls. They need to see themselves within the curriculum experience. And not as an anomaly, not as, oh my gosh, those are the minorities. No, they've historically excluded populations. The ones that you put quotations around, the ones that you can figure out what to do with them when it comes to intervention, but when it comes to core instruction, you kind of struggle. The reason you struggle is because you refuse to decenter whiteness in the educational experience and make sure every child sees their lived experience every single day as they enter your school environments. If you care about kids, they will see themselves every single day in the educational environment. If you don't care about them, keep doing what you're doing because you're going to keep getting the results you're getting and you're going to keep casting blame. But at the end of the day, the onus is on the adults that create these experiences. Are we doing what we need to do for each and every child to learn and succeed? If we're not doing what we need to do, I challenge every educator, quit the field. Like, this is the perfect time to quit and just say, I don't care.
When I said that, I got in trouble.
Well, guess what? I can say it. Why can I say it? There are millions of people that are looking for work, and there are lots of them can be great educators. So I don't get in this thing. We can't find people. Yeah, I agree. Do we need to raise pay? Yeah. Do we need better working conditions? Yeah. But if you're not going to do right by these babies and by these kids, we don't need you. Because guess what? I've taught 30 and 40 kids in the room. Does it suck? Yeah, but I'd rather do that than have somebody that's detrimental and essentially tracking out my child from a high quality educational experience.
I think, and I think you may have tweeted this before, I don't remember, but one of the litmus tests for me as a parent is would I send my kid here? And that's always a two-part question for me. It's always why or why not. Because even if the answer is yes, I would send my child to this school. Why? Why would I send my child to this school? What is it that's going on here that makes me as a parent feel like this would be a safe space for my child so that we can replicate that? If not, what is it that makes me feel like this is not a safe space for my child so that we can try and intervene and change that? So, especially there are a lot of teachers who are parents. And are you teaching in a space that you is your let's start small. Is your classroom run in such a way that if you dropped in on your kid's classroom and that teacher was doing what you were doing, would you be cool with that for yours?
And my thing is, you got to practice what you preach. I'm in a space where I can send my kids to a private school. There's a pretty decent private school in the area, and when they first were going into the school age, I was like, I'm just going to keep them here because I like them for pre-K. Keep them there. I like the environment. But then I thought, Chris, you'll be a hypocrite. You going and working with public schools, saying you believe in public schools, and your kids in private school. So guess what? My kids in public school, and I'm with you. If your child could not be in your educational environment or shouldn't be in your educational environment, guess what? If it's not good enough for your child, it's not good enough for anybody's child. So again, I will say it. If you're at a school environment, you wouldn't let your child go there. You need to go find an environment to teach at, and which is good enough for your child. Because someone else's child is there, and you all, no one on this watching, and none of us, we're not saviors. We don't put on magical capes. We're here to save them, Chris. We gotta save them. That's the movies. This is serious business education. Every child every day deserves the best, and if you can't do it, go drive for Uber. Like, there's a lot of people hiring right now, and we can find more teachers.
Well, it's funny that you said that because I actually have a show coming up where I am talking to a recruiter to kind of help teachers that are in that place. Let's retool that resume. Let's take these skills that you've learned as an educator or honed as an educator and move into other spaces if that's what you want to do. Don't feel like you're stuck here because teaching is all I know. Because that doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve you because you deserve to be happy. It doesn't serve the kids because they deserve to have someone standing in front of them that wants to be
there. And you nice to me. You giving them a pathway out. I'm like, hey, I'm focused on the ones that want to be educators. I have an ambitious goal. I want to train 10,000 Black melanated. I won't even just say Black. I want to train 10,000 melanated mathematics educators. That's my goal.
I'm giving you an out because I want you to go.
I'm just giving you the paperwork. You nice. I'm giving you paperwork. Why? Because I need to focus my energies on there are educators every day that I know that are up right now doing lesson plans. There are educators right now taking some kid home. There are educators right now that are crying because they want the best for their kids. I need to support and fight for them every single day. And those other educators, districts need to start firing them and giving them pink slips.
They're not going to do that.
Hey, wait, pause. Why they can't do that?
I didn't say they can't. I didn't say they can't. I said they're not going to. And I'm gonna tell you why.
You tell me why, then I'll give you some thoughts.
I'm gonna tell you why they're not going to. They're not going to because we're already in a teacher shortage. They're not going to because in states where there's a union and there's a thing that takes a lot of work to get rid of a tenured teacher. And I'm not saying it can't be done because it can, but most people in my experience aren't willing to put that work in to dismiss those teachers there. Oh. And that's why we have these teachers that have been sitting here doing this disservice for as long as they have. And what do we do? Especially in elementary school. We're going to put them where we feel they can do the least amount of damage. What does that mean in a K-8 school? Every grade is critical. Where do you put somebody in K-8 to do the least amount of damage?
So here's the thing. I'm pushing back on that. Why? You said, I get their unions and stuff, but in the past 2 years, I've seen people rally together over a mass of that can literally save lives and dismantle masking problems in schools and districts. I've seen parents get together and dismantle critical racism, critical race theory, what is non-existent in school in the past 2 years. If we took that same energy and reversed it and came together and fought for better schools, fought for better pay, guess what? We can change education. We need to use, I'm going to put it, I don't know if you want me to say this on your show, but I'm going to say it. We need to use that 45. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We need that 45 energy to do what's right. And there are 46 million Black folks in the United States alone. In the United States. If we look worldwide, it's a lot of Black folks worldwide. Don't get on this whole thing, you're a minority population. We look at this thing through a global lens. What the problem is, we got to come together and come together for some simple, basic things. Like we want to come together for some other things, come together on behalf of education. Because these parents can come together and do mass policies and critical race theory, and they are a global minority, we can come together, the global majority, and do what's right for these kids and do what's right at the same time for these teachers and get them better pay. We keep letting minority of folks, a minority of politicians, a minority of folks just dismantle and tear apart all of the things that we have built. It is up to us as educators in this space. And there are some great, I'm not excluding anybody by race or ethnicity as an educator. If we come together, we can make this thing better. But we keep worrying about a lot of stuff that really we can't control or it doesn't matter. All of it matters. It's just us working together and fighting for better salaries, working together and fighting. Hey, and a lot of teachers that want to see more culture responsive curriculums, fight for it. Stop buying ones that are not. But we got to be willing to come together and fight like these 45 supporters. If we fought, I'm going to put it out there. Cause I said a couple months, I said we had about 18 months after the George Floyd unfortunate killing to like change society. That 18-month runway is kind of run out. I would say this, we have between now and November to put together that 45 type energy and we can flip this thing upside down. We can change education for the better and we can do what we need to do.
Now, what does that look like? And I guess this is as good a place to end as any. What does changing the education for the better look like?
One, we need to work collectively. Like we can't have every organization doing we need a collective. And again, people gonna say, how do you get collectives together? Literally, what's our collective mission? To educate kids. So let's get all of those folks that want to educate kids and rally them together. Then when we get those folks that want to rally together and care about all kids, all right, the second thing we're going to start rallying together, what do we want? Chris, we need better pay. All right, so on our agenda, we're going to focus on better pay. We're going to get a couple politicians in our community that are focused on better pay. Then the other thing, Chris, we want culturally responsive curriculum. All right, guess what? That same small group of contingent, let's work together and create our own curriculums. I know it's kind of simplistic, but I don't want people to think it's bite-sized chunks. Because
no, I got you.
I'm seeing people that are doing the work, but the question is, it's not even us doing those small things, fighting for unapologetic for teacher pay, fighting unapologetic for culture responsive teaching. The quick key is, are we willing to put that 45 type energy into it?
And what is that type energy? What does that look like for us?
You got to be ready to go for broke. I'm gonna put something to the audience out there. As I know we're wrapping up. I'm from the South, y'all. I'm like a Baptist minister. I may wrap up 5 or 6 times.
That's okay.
Here's my thing. I say this to every group that I work with. At the end of the day, all of us have the same destination, and that destination is that graveyard. I'm gonna keep it 100. Yeah. You're only here for a short amount of time, and when you stop living like it, you're gonna be here forever, and you start living a life of purpose. Then you get this unapologetic energy say, guess what? My life is going to be meaning. I'm going to live meaning, and guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to fight for teacher pay in my community, period. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to fight for culture responsive teaching in my community. That's all I'm going to do. And we're doing it on behalf of these kids. When you see these kids that are rallying in Florida as it relates to these bills that don't say gay bills, you need to be fighting with them. When you see these kids that are rallying in Minnesota for increased teacher pay, you need to be fighting with them. because these kids are our future. And when it comes, I'm talking to black folks, we are a collectivist people. Don't let this westernized whole thing get us distracted. This individual, we are a collectivist people with a collectivist energy that built this country, that built this world. We have to be together and fight as one. And I'm saying Black Lives Matter, like for my people, because that's what's our bond. Just like the 45 group, that's their bond. They think this our bond, unbreakable, unstoppable. Think about all that we've done, not since slavery, because we love to talk about the slavery narrative. No, what we've done since the beginning of time. Guess who's still here? The question is, are we going to use that energy to make it better? Or are we going to just sit down, lay back, and let all the things our ancestors done go to waste? Yeah. Everybody should be at their school Monday. What can I do to help y'all? Ask the principal, what can I do to help you? And if you got a principal that, hey, they're not the right person or they doing bad by our kids, guess what? 10 of y'all should be down there every Monday, every day. 10 of y'all, hey, you got to go. Every day, you got to go.
That's that accountability coming back. So now when I do this, the community is going to be on my butt about it. And again, we've said this before, that changes the way people move. So if you had one parting thought for our audience, what would that be?
I'll leave you all with a quote by one of my favorite scholars, Dr. John Henry Clark. And I'll read it just so I don't mess it up. And Dr. Clark says the following. Powerful people cannot afford to educate the people they oppress. Because once you are truly educated, you will not ask for power, you will take it. Y'all really think these folks, and this is just not black folks, it's not just Hispanic identifying folks, not just Asian identifying folks, not even just white folks. Y'all really think the system,
that's capitalism 101.
You really think the system is going to give you the tools to tear it down? If you want a better society, you want a better place, you want this kumbaya, you got to do what you got to do and be willing to go for broke with it. Because they're going to be willing to go for broke to dehumanize you. They're going to be willing to go for broke to tear everything down. You got to have that same amount of energy and understand you are the global majority in this work. Don't let the news fool you. Don't let social media fool you. And don't let narratives fool you. You're the global majority. That's why they're fighting so hard to destroy you. But if you work together and come together, you can't be destroyed. We can turn this thing around and make it better. And to my black folks out here that are watching it, stop getting scared. If Black Lives Matter you better wear it on your chest, because when you walk out that door, they see that black skin. And for these kids, y'all keep doing the right thing. Us adults going to do better and do the right thing for you and not let the system beat us down, because what we're in is a marathon. And when you understand when you're in a marathon, understand you're in a marathon where you can actually pass the baton. It's the older generation passing it to the next generation passing the next generation. And we're going to keep fighting to get this thing fixed for the better. We've seen it done. We just time for us to retake the throne.
Well, there it is. If I had a mic, I would drop it. How do we find you?
You can reach me out on all social media platforms at DRKChilds, at DRKCHILDS. Also, check out my website, www.KristopherChilds.com. That's Christopher with a K, ChristopherChilds.com. Got a lot of new things coming out. Since this is live, I do have if you're watching this live, you get a sneak preview. I got a new show that's dropping on April the 2nd, Inspiring Voices from the Classroom, where I interview mathematics educators from across the country. Also, I got a podcast, Inspiring Educators Podcast, that comes out every other week on Apple and all those platforms. But if you follow me on social media, I give you some more nuggets of how we can overtake the system, how we can make it right for these kids, and how we can be unapologetically black and do what we need to do to make education in the society and the world a better place. And then last but not least, I want to quote Dr. Maisha Wynn. And since mathematics is my area of expertise, I want us to, and I live by this, how can we use mathematics to get people to stop hating one another? Stay tuned, I'll tell you how.
All right. Well, I know I get my nuggets from you on Twitter, and this has been Strong Conversations, Hot Takes from a Cultural Firebrand. Thanks again for listening. Thank you again, Dr. Childs, for starting this series off, and y'all have a good one.